So, hey man, it's really good seeing you. I always enjoy chatting with you and appreciate you coming on, man.
Sure, man.
So, I wanted to, first off, I want to ask a couple things. I wanted to ask how you're doing and maybe get an update because a lot of people have read your multiple books,
All
gathered
the
and
great
scattered.
theological works of Hugh
Hey
Halter.
man. Hey man, I'm telling you, I quote that Bible. I was on a interview today. Every chance I get, man, I'm dropping like Hugh Halter says in Bible. If you're full time on staff, you need to reproduce yourself. I mean, there was so many gems in that little book, dude. I mean, all your books are good, but I love that freaking book. Love
I,
that book.
I always thought my happy hour pamphlet was the best theological work I ever did.
That is your best book, hands down.
How,
Bible and Happy Hour are my two favorites. I know they're not ever like people talk about Gathered and Scattered. Those are my two favorites. Happy Hour was fantastic.
how to throw a party. That's all I
Yep.
got. My only contribution to this whole whatever.
Yeah. And you throw a party well. So tell me about the party that's been going on in Hugh Halter's world.
Well, there's a lot. Yeah, we moved to this town it's been 6 years now, Peyton, from Denver.
It's
We
crazy.
Yeah, we had no idea we'd be doing this, honestly. I always figure wherever we've moved, a church plant emerged from it. But I knew for sure that it wasn't going to happen that way here.
Mm,
And then, if I know you know the story, some guy gave me a building that I'm sitting in right now, and it's right in the center of downtown, and we turned it into the living room for our town. It's a struggling town of about 30,000, about 20 minutes north of St. Louis. And
I got building work going on in the background. Sorry
apparently,
about that.
I,
It's
I,
actually,
I respect that.
yeah, no, it's actually someone at the Jones house having a temper tantrum, but we're not going to talk about that.
Anyway, whatever. They can bang around, it's fine.
No, it's building. It's building where this has been. You can see my office is still being built. It looks like I'm rebuilding your office, like a postmaster or something. Like sort your
This
letters.
is our cool room. This is apparently the postmaster did hang himself in this room way back in the day. So
He did.
we're on the haunted tour here.
Nice.
And, yeah.
Do you see
Alton is
any
the most
ghosties?
haunted. Well, I have had a few situations that made me leave the building.
Yeah,
I don't want to like attribute it to that, but
sure.
yeah, other people have had some weird things happen. So,
Nice.
but Alton is known as the most haunted city in America.
Are you serious?
Yeah, we got haunting, I mean, people flying from all over.
Okay, I need to see the show where like the Ghost Adventures goes
There,
into the.
there are always Alton episodes. I
Okay,
guarantee
all
you.
right, I'm gonna check those out now.
Yeah. So anyway, so we started this all day brunch cafe. It turned into be kind of the premier event center in town for weddings, and then we added a coffee roasting company, a co-working deal, blah blah blah. We do a commons yoga in here. And then we try to help incubate good works around our city. And what we would now say is just build kingdom ecosystem, but actually frame that as a new way of planting the church, if you will. So
Nice.
it's not just there to start cool stuff. We want to see a spiritual community form.
Right.
We do it through business and job creation and covenant community, pretty intense covenant community. And yeah, that's what we've been doing. So we throw a lot of parties for other people, and within our own network, we have an amazing coffee bar right next to an amazing whiskey bar that supports all the parties that we throw. So sometimes I'm working behind the bar as a bartender. Sometimes I'm just mopping up after an event. And yeah, I do. They call me Big Poppy. I don't do much. Like this whole thing runs itself. I just kind of oversee it now. And
I think if I called you Big Poppy, you'd punch me, right? Like that. I can't get away with that, huh?
I want it, but I have gotten bigger in the midsection, so it sort of fits now.
I feel your pain. I'm doing Shanti's insanity workout to work some of this textbook weight off, man. Because all I
Wow,
did was
that's a blast from the past. A little Shanti,
Shanti, right? Like
like in the
eight.
garage, like hot garage.
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
eight years younger when I did it, and it's no joke. It's kicking my old man butt. But hey, so guys, welcome for joining us. I know you didn't tune in to hear about Sean T, but we are going to focus now. Only those of you, if you know, you know. And so Hugh and I are going to talk now about business's mission, something that he just described. He's in Alton. Someone gave him a building, and I want to hear a little bit more of a story. Like, obviously, everybody's like, Hugh, how do I get someone to give me a building? So we're gonna unpack a bit, part of the vision casting and part of the heart that you had for Alton, because as a post-industrial city, there was a lot of depression, there's a lot of economic decline, there's a lot of stuff. And I apologize about this banging, but I paint him by the hours. I can't tell him to stop. But as you got started, I'll mute myself in a second here, but as you kind of entered into this journey, what were the first kind of inklings where you knew, like, okay, I know that I'm here and there's a need here and I'm going to do something different? And how did you start converting that burden into a vision?
Yeah, it's actually interesting, Peyton. The first inkling was that I could not just come in here and do traditional church. So inkling wasn't about what the new thing was going to be. It was that I can't do the old thing here. This town doesn't like outsiders. So if I come in as a pastor, church planter, it's middle finger from everybody, from the pastors and from the city. So I just started to walk the streets and pray, God, what do you want us to do? And it's probably 6 months of just asking. And, I wasn't really desperate. There was nothing writing on it financially for me. So I would literally was just like, we felt called here as a family. We definitely knew that. So we knew God was sending us here. But we weren't, and we figured it was probably going to be our last move. So we thought, okay, 30 years. So there's no hurry. 30 years till, I get shot in the neck or something. But, I figured I had, one last good run in me. So there was no hurry, and I just, God, whatever you want to do. I did try to, it's a town of 30,000 people. So when we would just walk around, you couldn't get a cup of coffee. So imagine a town of 30,000. No, there's no place where people hung out. No coffee shop, no breakfast, no daytime space at all. And so I tried to buy this little boarded up gas station like they have in Portland, Oregon, where I'm from. They'll renovate these old. So I thought, literally, I'm just going to start my own little coffee shop and for myself, and maybe it'll help me get to know some of the people in the city and stuff. And that deal did not go through. And as I was talking through that with my wife on an afternoon coffee, she was like, well, maybe we're moving too fast. Maybe we should just literally give it an entire year and just be here. And I thought that sounded great. So I said, yeah, let's just not do anything. And then 2 hours later, this guy called me and took me on a tour and then gave me this building. So, maybe that's an Abraham Isaac thing, but there was a sense that we do not want to try to think what would be good news to this town on our own. We need God to bring us his idea. And apparently he wanted a coffee shop and everything I just described. So,
So right when you guys put on the brakes, then Hugh, this guy just goes, hey, I got this building, post comments. How did you respond to that? Like, did you say, oh man, I totally want to start this and that? Did you tell him, or had you guys had a conversation, or what was the?
No, we had one lunch. He knew that we had come in with some purpose. He actually financed a pastor's training lunch that I was doing. So I heard about this guy as kind of a benefactor in the city. And yeah, he just pulled up and said, my wife and I bought this about a year and a half ago, but we own a lot of buildings in town. And just, as we talked, and, I actually, when he offered, I said no, because it was too big. I didn't think I could raise enough money to get it going. So, but he gave me the key to it. And he said, just give it back to me if you really don't want it. But, we talked about some things that would maybe get the town moving. So we were having kind of the conversation about the town. It wasn't, sometimes when I'm talking to church planters, we generally try to plan our church, right? But this was different. Like, we moved here because my wife said, why don't we sell the ranch and move here and see if we can help the town? And now this guy's talking with me about the city. So I think that's maybe a better way to approach the little areas that we get called to is, how can we move the dial? I think sometimes church planting is just creating atmosphere for the next guy, maybe, I mean, so, and I didn't really care. So I said, no, he said, take it, keep it for a couple months. If you don't want it, give it back. And then my whole family and I walked through it, and my daughter went, this is a no-brainer, Dad. Like, let's just create the living room for our town. So,
That's a rad vision.
yeah. So that became it. We didn't know what would come out of it. But I knew a lot of relationships it would be teed up. We wouldn't have to try to get anybody to come to anything we were doing. They would just come, so, and it really has happened. People do thank us all the time for what we've done in this town. A woman walked by my house the other day. Some people that have read our books know about our son Ryan's epilepsy that really guided us even to this town, because he was in an assisted living center here. So that's what got us here. He did finally pass away about 8 months ago. And there was a woman that was walking by my house probably a few weeks after he had passed. He died in our house, so people knew that he was kind of on his last couple of days in our home. And so she just stopped and said, sorry to hear about Ryan. He used to come down and talk with me all the time. And then she started to walk away, and she turned back around. She said, hey, by the way, like, there's a lot of people, like, we're really glad your family moved to our city. And she said, like, your guys' story means a lot to a lot of people. So, again, and that's not a pat on our back. I just think when the Lord moves us into places, I think he wants us to think about the town and how we can have an influence on the city. I think, what may happen in our own church development is a secondary thing, but the witness is what we do in the city. So I don't know if some of the listeners need to hear that, but it really, I've learned this, you can't build God's church and you can't even convict or convince people of sin, righteousness, and holiness. So the pressure's completely off. God said, I will build this thing, and I will send my Holy Spirit that will do all the heavy lifting. So our job really becomes this beautiful freedom of being able to entrepreneur ways that make the work of the Holy Spirit as easy as possible. Maybe that's the goal of church planting.
Everything you're saying, Hugh, it's always, because I know you're more, I don't know if you see yourself this way, but you are. You're definitely apostolic. And the apostolic gifting has that creating community and creating culture and creating atmosphere. What you said earlier, that's just part of the unconscious gifting of apostolics. It's just what they do. It's like the eye of the hurricane to them is just normal, but all around them is ripping all this transformation and bringing people together. Like you actually become, if you think of the Apostle Paul, he's an aggregator. He's bringing all these people together so they can disperse back out. So it's kind of like an oscillating universe around the apostolic. But when you went into this city, obviously, not only was the guy drawn to you from Post Commons, but also you needed a little bit of funding. How did that happen? So, like, I remember at that time, the guy gave you the bill and you're like, hey, you guys want a partner? You started putting an APB out. Talk to me about selling that vision, because I know that's probably not your normal skin, if I'm not mistaken. Like,
I had always had some missionary support through 30 years of planting. But I was mostly a house painter, so the support was usually a third of our income. It seemed like when we moved here, because we didn't know what we were doing, I never asked for any money coming here, so that we had no support at all. By this time of my life, there's no supporters. And but there was one gentleman that said, "Hey," and he knew our story, and he's very close to especially our kids. And he said, when God tells you what to do in Alton, we'd love to be a part of it financially. So I had that one offer. So when I got the building, I called Al and I said, hey, so I make a long story short, I told him what had happened. And I said, Al, I don't, a lot of things have changed, so I don't want to hold you to your original interest. And he said, how much do you need? I said, well, I think it's going to be 750 grand to develop this thing. And he said, I'll give you 300. So there was a verbal of 300 over, Yeah, so I went, okay, I'll let you know what I decide. And then the next day I was flying into San Francisco to speak at a men's retreat, completely unrelated to any of this. It had been booked for a year. And it was a bunch of Presbyterian guys out in East Bay, California. I'm just part of my talking with these guys is to share this crazy story of our family moving to Alton. And yeah, we're thinking about renovating this old building. And it ended up that a handful of those guys have ended up giving us almost $250,000 without any requests at all. They just started offering it like Alan did. And then, so I came back from that with another $150,000 committed. So technically it was 500,000 within a week that was committed. And then I'm standing out in front of the building, staring at it before I've even taken it. And the mayor of our town came walking across because we're right next to City Hall. And he said, "Are you Hugh Halter?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I heard you might be taking this building." And I said, "Yeah, I'm thinking about it." He says, "Well, if you do, like the city will give you money because we want to see this happen too." So within, very short order, there was not only a building and a vision. It's like God was bringing everything to us. Like we didn't have to ask. I still have never had to ask for any money for this. So, and I don't think some people went, well, that's a Hugh factor. That's people knew you. None of these people knew me like an author. There was nobody that was impressed with me. These were just weird circumstances. And again, I like to tell people I spent my first 40 years of ministry just trying to work hard for God. And I think I thought up most of the visions, and then I tried to make all my visions happen. And I was out begging money for my visions. And, I'm now 54, and my commitment is that I will never do anything unless I see the Father doing it. Like it's just his world, it's his kingdom. So I don't, again, these are challenges later in life, challenges to young leaders is
Love it.
what if it's true that God is more creative than us and he knows the best way to use us in cities? And what if he actually has funding to do what he wants to do? So
I love it. That's really good. It's a timely message for me at the moment. So you went from, okay, I remember, because anyone who's read your books knows, like you said, you're a house painter. You're doing the church planning stuff. So you had a sense of business, but now you're running Post Commons, and so there's a restaurant, a wedding center, a community space. Like you said, there's multi-use yoga classes, different things, art community, drama. There's all these different things run out, plus a full functioning bar. Coffee house, yada, yada. So it's almost like multiple businesses within businesses. And one of the things that I think church planners are cottoning on to now is, that, and I lay this out in the book that I just wrote, where Paul actually partners with Priscilla and Aquila. Like it's business in a big way. Ministry is business. They were business people. They were benefactors. They were patrons, but not in the sense of just here's money, Paul, but let's partner. Let's piggyback on the back of this business. You can send all of your missionaries all over. Silas, Barnabas. How did these guys make a living? Well, they were obviously tent makers alongside Paul. So now you've gone from the ministry world with some business savvy, running your own painting business, but now you've come into, okay, this is a whole new level. There are now almost businesses within businesses. What shifts did you have to make, and how was it different? What business side of things did you learn that were different than ministry?
that's a great question. Yeah, like I will generally tell people everything we're doing now, I've never done. Like I've never run a restaurant. I still don't tell my staff. I still buy coffee at gas stations sometimes. This is high third wave coffee that we're doing now. We're roasting. The key was that I found the people that had the passion. So I didn't try to start a restaurant. I hired chefs that had done restaurants before. And I hired a young man named David that runs our coffee program who had already been doing that. He was just looking to lead his own thing. So that's when we talk about building kingdom ecosystems. you're not trying to do it all. You're just creating a playing field for everybody else to do what they do. Now, obviously, we had to learn lots of things, right? And I was involved in LLC setups to nonprofit setups to, picking out the style of mugs we wanted. I mean, I was involved in everything, but I was always relying on the people that had much more of the passion for the unique parts of what we were doing. I actually I ran the wedding events at first. I'm meeting with brides talking about their weddings. And my own wife and daughter were like, that ain't gonna last long. But I wasn't bad at it, because, there's
Hugh Halter wedding planner is not something I would have put under your like high school, most likely to succeed picture,
Yeah, but I liked, if you're a church planter, you generally like anything hospitality, party, gathering, right? So I enjoyed showing them through the building and, blah, blah, blah. But very quickly, I had to find a young gal named Justin who ended up being fantastic running. So, we're 3.5 years in the business. I can be gone for 3 months and everything runs. So to me, the apostolic essence is not that you do everything, but you do have to get everything started. You at least have to get the motor running and let other people kind of link in, if you will. But yeah, I can still be a dumb house painter and this thing goes pretty well.
So let me ask you about the employee side of things. So just getting down to the brass tacks. I know a lot of planners are coming in, or even, just not even planners. Sorry for all of you that I insulted by calling you church planners. Us bottom dwellers, we see it as a badge of honor. But the rest of you, we know what we just called you. But as somebody who has really had to kind of enter into this space, you've got employees, you've got insurance, you've got all these different crazy things now. What's your structure? What's the business model? Is it a nonprofit? Is the business owned by the nonprofit? How do you structure the business side of things? Is there like an umbrella organization, or how does it all work?
Great question. By the way, I'll tell you how we're organized, but we're finding other kingdom ecosystems all over the place right now. And there's always unique nuances and variances. So for us, we did start off with a nonprofit because we had to receive the building and give this gentleman a write-off for the building. And then I knew we'd be raising so much money. So you have to have a nonprofit if you need to raise money in most cases. So that nonprofit is called the Lantern Network. We never talk about the nonprofit. We bylawed it with the purpose statement that all we do is incubate good works. Very general. We did not bylaw it as a church. We bylawed it as a charitable organization. That's because we knew we'd be doing some justice works and we might even want federal money for some of the stuff we do. So we want the Jesus side to be subversive. So we don't lead with a front door religious type of thing. And usually about half of our employees are not believers anyway. So we would never say we're a Christian business, but we would say all of our board members over the nonprofit are Jesus people. All of our managers are Jesus people. But we never highlight that, and we never talk about the nonprofit name. We don't do fundraising banquets and ever talk about what we're doing. So, but we DBA'd Lantern Network as Post Commons. So our public brand name, people would say, hey, meet me at Post Commons, because that's the name that people already knew the building as the Post. It was the old federal post office. So we just tacked on the Commons name. So usually when people find out we're a nonprofit, they come and they're like, hey, we didn't know you were a nonprofit, and so I have to explain to them the story. And then what we do is, a lot of people don't know this, but you can set up a system. LLCs can be held by a nonprofit. So far, we have not taken advantage of that, but if you want to look at a group called Common Thread out of Birmingham, Alabama, the leaders of kind of the apostolic heads that started that are now up here in Alton with us for a season. Lindsay runs all of our financial structures, and they have they got up to 24 businesses in Birmingham, and probably 2/3 of those roughly were their own LLCs underneath the nonprofit. And so there are different ways that you can kind of handle this, but there are benefits to that. Like right now with COVID, restaurants all over the country are being able to get federal money. We just found out that we can't because we're a nonprofit. But if we had set up our individual businesses, the coffee, the wedding events, so if we had LLC'd all of those separately, we would have been able to get federal money under those. So we just learned a hard lesson today.
That's huge, dude. That's huge. Yeah, the LLC is more of a business structure than a tax. You know, all that the nonprofit, for profit, for those of you guys who are new into this, that's just a tax status. You know, the structure of your business, S corp, LLC, whatever you decide to do, sole prop, those have nothing to do with really your.
And the benefit, like we might have lost a grant, but we also had the ability to raise, you know, now at this point, we're probably close to $1 million. We've been able to just free money that people have given to us, just like they give to any other kingdom venture, and they get a write-off. So there are always pluses and minuses to how you organize. But for sure, it helped us to organize not as a church in most cases.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
did you say that you, in doing your nonprofit, would you guys be functioning as like an S corp, or what was your business started as?
But it just started as a 501c3.
Okay. All right. So quick question.
And Peyton, by the way, just because I know people keep asking right now, the money from the events, the money from the coffee, the money from the roastery, the money from what would be co-working or commons yoga, whatever it is that functions, all of those have their own checking account. So we keep money separate between those.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
But they're all under one bucket, if you will, right now.
Right. So did you have to hire did you hire like admin, treasurer, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that has always actually been Lindsay from Common Threads. We outsourced because she was running all of the economic infrastructure for their network down there. She just added us to that. And now we're trying to build out that same, essentially when we're building out a kingdom ecosystem, you actually want to provide those common admin functions.
Yeah.
Because most people that entrepreneur a new idea. So if my daughter wants to do commons yoga, she only has time to add an extra 8 hours a week to her already busy schedule. She has no time to run admin. So a lot of times the new wine that we need to be produced, it just won't be produced if people have to handle. So I think handling the admin is maybe the most important element in church planting today. If you can get people to go after their visions, you have to provide them that back office support.
Yeah, that's good. One of the partners that I work with is called Simplify Church, and I've used them for like probably 8 years, man, to outsource anything I do in ministry, literally for that reason. And then you've got to have your own accountability and things, but those are the hamsters on the wheel, that help.
So the accountability above us is our board. So we have a board of 5 people. I'm the president of the board, but I'm not tied in financially to the structures here. So I serve this as a volunteer. And so that, again, those are things you have to take into account. If you need to make money from the build out, which is fine, then you may not be able to be a part of the board type of thing if it's a nonprofit, but you can definitely make a normal salary from a nonprofit, just like you would a church or a business. So
that's good. So with the one of the guys, by the way, on here, he's saying, this is Howard Oakes, you troubler of Israel. I see you. Don't think I don't. It's an old friend of mine. He says, my great grandfather was a pastor. A friend of mine was, by the way, a little generous. My great grandfather was a pastor at a Presbyterian church in Alton during the mid 19th century. So that was kind of a cool little factoid. But let me tell you something about Howard Oakes. Howard Oakes, when I was a young 20-something-year-old man, used to, a boy practically, and I was preaching a big mega church in Huntington Beach. He used to heckle me, but it was good fun. So, but I still harbor this deep grudge. But so, anyways, okay. So, if you were to speak now, and this is kind of going off when you said, "Man, we just learned the hard lesson today." I'm sure that there has been a ton of experience chalked up to your last 6 years in Alton. What if you were to go back and talk to yourself 6 years ago, like right now, you go speak to younger Hugh Halter, younger self, time machine, Back to the Future. Hugh, before you start, I need to tell you this. Make sure, obviously, that one you just mentioned, about how you structure to be one. What other advice would you give to anyone starting this out?
Well, to not see our story as a weird story, but as it's represented, it's the way that churches started all the way up into about 100 years ago. The gospel got to all of us through people that all had jobs. I mean, it's a very weird thing to think about, but our idea of paid vocational ministry it's an aberration to the norm, and related to passages, two of them, that make it sound like we should always receive a full income from preaching. That's not what those scripture, a workman's worthy of his hire, give the guys double honor. It's double honor because these guys are doing double duty. They're working the fields with their sons, and then they're taking some ownership or responsibility for a growing body of believers. So, a workman's worthy of his hire was oftentimes you give the guy an extra chicken that you have, because he might ride in on his horse and preach to 12 of your friends. So I would just say, when you look at the book of Acts, you have the story of the church always leading from apostolic, that go into a city and they create new wine that doesn't fit in old wineskins. So you have to see Paul. Remember when Paul says, "Hey, I decided to work so as not to be a burden to you guys." That's how you create new wine. You're not beholding to people. You're definitely not beholding to the traditional mindset of consumer Christians. And you've seen this, Peyton. This is like 100% of the story. Is money drives mission. And if you don't disconnect money from mission, you're not gonna be able to do this stuff. And if you can't do it, you will probably not enjoy your life. And in this, 15 years ago, Peyton, you knew this. There was a shot that if you did preaching well, you could grow a church and keep enjoying preaching if you love that. And we now know, even if we're fantastic, they ain't coming. They just ain't coming. And so I would tell young missionaries, we'll call them missionaries now, because that means everybody can be in, that missionaries don't need money to do the work of the kingdom. All the ministries that we see in the book of Acts, all the APES giftings we see in Ephesians, every function of ministry should be given to the world for free. You don't need money to preach, and you don't need money to counsel. You don't need money to shepherd a friend. You don't need money to share the gospel with somebody. And so if the functions of ministry can be done for free, then look at all the money and resource that can now be consolidated, like the book of Acts, and then given out to the needs of our city. Because that really is the story of the Old Testament tithe, and it's the story of New Testament consolidated giving. The witness of the church, don't miss this, the witness of the church was that nobody had any need. And why? Because people covenanted together in cities, and they shared their stuff. And they all worked jobs, and nobody was anybody's. Hugh Halter was never everybody's pastor. Hugh was part of the community, maybe one of the big brothers, or maybe one of the elders. But you've got to begin to reframe the idea of church, and especially church planting, as normal people that live life together, and they link their stuff together. And I know it sounds like a radical view, because that's just not the way we do it in America, but it's the way we did do it for a long time. And we just, I don't know. I think I said too much there, but
no, you're preaching to the choir, man. Anyone familiar with my stuff is going, hey, these guys, they're twins. Obviously, Hugh is the taller, sexier version, but I'm the Hobbit version here of what you're saying.
Taller. How short are you, Peyton? Because I'm
5'7".
I'm now shrunk to 5'9".
You look taller in your pictures, man. I'm just saying.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, see, as a 5'9" man, you appreciate this. You know what I'm talking about. All you tall people out there, you're freaks. So, yeah, hearing what you're saying there, which is like 100% wheelhouse for me. I think that's how Paul literally freed up all of his people, was to get them working tent makers. And of course, we use that, cliche, it's tent making ministry. But Literally, they were in the hub of the marketplace, like you are in Alton. Business is you're providing something valuable. Paul's making tents for people. He's in a Mediterranean hot climate. Everybody needs tents. Your tents get faded and eaten through by the sun. You got to, every few years, redo your tent. Paul's there providing something very useful that people need. And while he's doing that, he's giving them something they need even more, which is the gospel. And I would love it if, and you mentioned this, on the previous interview that I was on today for the book, I was just telling him, because I said I went into the whole thing you just said about, because I've got 2 chapters on that, but one of the things I said was the fringe benefit is when you're on a team leadership, like an APES team, and you're planting together, you're all fulfilling different functions, and people who come to you from the old model and go, it may sound like that, but that's not what they're saying. But so, they come to you and they go, hey, you're supposed to be my pastor, and you're like, I remember just looking at people when I was in Wales and I was working either as a barista or a firefighter. I would just tell them, but I don't work for you.
Yeah.
Like, I actually work a job just like you, and I'm balancing my marriage and family with everything else. And you would watch the penny drop and they'd be like, oh,
Yep.
Okay. And there was like this respect. And then there was then you're not going to like hold me like a baby and feed me with a baba every night and sing me to sleep. You're just like, yeah, I'm a dude. I've been telling you the whole time, I'm a dude just like you. Yep. And I'm working my job, earning my crust. And we're the whole thing about church planning is trying to get people to do what you're doing anyways. That's the apostolic mobilizer in you, is stop looking at me. Like Peter, stop looking at me.
Here's the one benefit too. And when you think about churches building out a kingdom ecosystem, you don't need to think like a lot of people. Honestly, again, we've been in this town about 6 years. The business started about 1.5 years in. So, we're 3.5 years into the business. We're 5 years into relational connection with people. And I would say we have about 25 adult missionaries with us. So when you go, okay, how many people have joined the spiritual community? We're not talking hundreds, but related to what we do, it's way more than 25 people are influenced by us and know about us. And it's hundreds of conversations about Jesus with people. So a lot of pretty incredible witness. The town is really glad we're here. And you go, well, that's not quite a big enough story. It probably will be when people go, hey, a lot of people are really glad you've moved to this town. When other business leaders go, you help get some things moving here. So I would try to encourage I even think about Taylor and Lindsay out of Birmingham. Taylor shared a story with me. And this is, they're 10 years in. We're half that years in, or a third. They said after about 10 years, the mayor of Birmingham found out they were moving up here to join us. And he was concerned that Taylor's movement was leaving Birmingham. So he said, is common thread, is your whole community. And their community is about 100 missionaries. But within all the things that they've built out, from cultural centers to schools to you name it, they think that there's many, many thousands of people that are being touched by their 100 missionaries. The mayor actually said, well, I'm glad you're the only ones leaving, because if your whole movement left Birmingham, we'd have to raise taxes to cover what you guys have been doing for our city. So when we think about church providing a place where people come here to preach, almost no influence in a city, and they don't care if we come or go. But if you come into it, especially when you find struggling parts of cities or a struggling town, and you just say, we're going to disciple to the level of a missionary. And if we only get 2 more of them every year, I can tell you, I feel like we have changed the town with 20 of us. And Birmingham would have to raise taxes if those 100 people left Birmingham. So, I feel like you should be encouraged, but every single person matters. You have to develop people to figure out what their passions are. You got to support them. And if a church emerges, if a spiritual community emerges, you don't have to ever water it back down to the level of a consumer. There's other
That's
people
good.
that have come in to plant churches, traditional churches, and we happily send people to them that we know that don't want this level of covenant community that we have. They don't want an entrepreneur or anything. They're good people. They just want someplace to go on the weekends with their kids. So,
They want Hugh Halter kicking their butt into mission.
no,
Come
they
on,
don't.
there's got to be
So,
an alternative to that.
but I think you can do far more good for a city, and you can actually be a unique witness with 20 people more than you can with 2,000 church attenders. So
Yeah.
I just don't know why you try to get church attenders anymore at all.
That's good, man. I think everybody eventually comes to the point where when they actually start doing like transformational discipleship ministry, they're like, this is all I need. There's always those little moments where like, this is why I'm in this for, which a crowd can never provide. But I want to go back for a second to the business aspect of this. Because we got some business geeks on here they're super. I know some of these guys personally, and they're geeking out on the business side because it's rare that you find people who can do both. I think Paul was that rare combination. There was even a guy in he's not far from your neck of the woods. I don't know if you ever heard of Guy Fance. He wrote a book called Stacking the Deck, where he did coffee roasters. He trained planters by day and they roasted coffee by night. And huge radical story. If you can ever get the book Stacking the Deck by Guy Fance, that's Pfanz. Really good book. But what he did is he franchised out this coffee roasting business by sending church planters out to start coffee roasting. So they would train with him. And one of the questions that we had come in was from Steve Wingate. By the way, all the good questions up front, I got to give credit where that was Robert Fraser, the man, the myth, the legend up in Idaho, Boise. But Steve Wingate asks, about a month ago, you post on Facebook a request for others considering working with you. Is that still something you're interested in?
Yeah, only if they have a passion or a specific vision. What we don't need are folks that just want to move in just because, like, and I'm learning this more and more. There's got to be a specific passion or skill set, something that you go, look, I think this town could use some of this. But yeah, for sure, we are looking for that. I think anybody
Yeah.
would do that.
He's wondering, he's posted again, people to learn and disciple and kind of be, active on mission, but kind of learn, learn what you have to pass on to.
I'd say no to that, because I mean, even back when we were doing a church based on missional community, we had a lot of people that would want to come observe, and it freaked out the system to have people observe. So that's why we were trying to train or coach more in your context. What we're doing a lot more of is flying into other cities when people are thinking about doing a similar thing and help them exegete their own town in your context. So I'd be more interested in that. We are going to be kind of going public with a framing document. And we don't even know the name of that yet, but probably in September it'll be related to building out kingdom ecosystems based on,
That's rad.
So maybe stay tuned. There'll be ways that we're actually just meeting today about ways that we can help funnel people into the concepts and the content, and then provide a pretty robust coaching system for those that are trying to get these off the ground.
I know I'd be personally interested. We're starting a bivocational training center here, kind of modeled after like the Ephesus hub, to plant a network, start a local network really in San Diego. So life is tough. Life is hard in San Diego. So
It's happening though.
feel a bit guilty.
They are popping up. It's what people did when they left the church. They just went, I still love Jesus, but I got a passion to be a graphic designer. They just didn't know that counted. So we're just now trying to say, no, it not only counts, it can be a part of an apostolic function in a city. But so, we need to teach more than just the business. The natural question is, well, how does it turn into spiritual community? And we're just as passionate, if not more, about that. So we really don't just want to do coffee shops. Coffee shops have to lead to something. And we want
That's
to talk
good.
about Jesus, and we want to see a community form, and we want to disciple people into our way of life.
So I want to spend maybe the remainder of our time before I kind of give like some upcoming events and ways to connect with you at the end here. I want to really maybe focus on that a little bit, because sometimes people are a little bit daunted perhaps by planting and starting a business. And what bothers me, and I'm going to go on my rant for a second, starting a business is not like planting a church. Starting a church is like starting a business, but planting a church is not like starting a business. And I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. Investing in people, sowing the seeds of the gospel, building those. That's not like starting a business. And people approach church as if they're going to start this religious business now, which I think is what we're trying to get away from. But what I was going to say is, I wanted to ask you real quick a little bit about the business one more time, before we go into that connection. How do you transition? Like, it's kind of like mission community. Remember, all the mission communities were like, they heard you're supposed to throw barbecues, so they threw like barbecues, and they never knew how to take it to the gospel. Like, they got stuck there. They just threw really rad barbecues. So I'm really interested to hear that conversation, right? But here's the deal: is that on the business side of things, where have the major crunches come for you? What have been like the blood, sweat, and tears where you're like, oh man, like this sucks? What have been some real kind of turning points for you, or crunch times from the business side of things?
Well, COVID clearly was a crunch time for our type of industry. So the service industry maybe took the biggest hit of all, right? So, but yeah, we weathered that because we had covenant. We did have to obviously lay off. We had 14 employees at the time. We had to go down to 4. So we kept all of our managers, and then we had to ask our little 20 missionary corps to all help out. So we literally had our little church team volunteering hours for wedding events or whatever it was, even working around the coffee shop. So I can't, I'm trying to think, other than just learning stuff, everything was very tight. Our industry, coffee and food, have such low margins. You don't make that much money on that. So you have to have what we call triple bottom line. There's other things you're counting. So we would say we would love to start more and more businesses. If they just break even, that's a win. They can just provide for the cost of the employees. So everybody that we employ, we would say that's a metric. That's a win for us. Our events make money. So our coffee and food is like loss leader, but it's our biggest win relationally, right? So each one of our businesses might have, in fact, weddings isn't that big of a relational win. It's more of a racial reconciliation win. In our town, we're 40% Black.
So that right there, Hugh, is huge. Just even thinking through your model, like your space, it may be used for this for a business, but it's kind of like the Stone Brewery out here in San Diego, right? They've got the most amazing,
Great IPA.
oh my, yeah, Stone IPA, but they've also got that beer garden. Have you been here, Hugh?
Yeah.
Have you been to it? I figured you made the pilgrimage. That is the Mecca of American beer gardens, right? So you go to this thing, and it's venues, like nonstop wedding. Like, they knew what they were doing. They knew they were going to make a butt ton of money, not just serving people beer, but running these kind of events, So I love that. So if you're thinking of running some kind of business like what he was talking about, think a little bit like a 2-tier business approach. What can make money, what can build relationship, and they may not be the same thing.
And even like, I would not have done this in Denver because Denver had 2,000 of these, right? So again, I think this works well when you actually identify struggling cities or struggling areas of cities, which of course is what Jesus has been trying to tell us anyway, right? We're going to get more bang for the buck in areas that are more impoverished or marginalized. So yeah, quit going to the suburbs and trying to do a cool coffee shop.
So when you say that, I even think like when you first spoke about Alton today, and I know your story, and you and I have talked a bunch of times, but immediately what came to mind was Jesus in Galilee, where it was just this quiet little place, not a bunch of, it wasn't like a sprawling metropolis. And Jesus spends the bulk of his ministry in this little place, just saturating it, kind of showing that model. Like, I could have gone to Capernaum. I could have gone to Jerusalem. I mean, I visited a couple times, but he could have gone where, the crowds were. But like you said, he went to these places where he could affect transformation on a smaller local level. And I think, Hugh, if nothing else, man, I think in many ways your Alton part of your ministry may be your biggest sermon yet.
Yeah, I hope so. Isn't it interesting, Peyton? Like, even watching so many denominations, the church planting model from 40 years ago to now has almost predominantly been to go to growing communities.
Yeah.
And like, now we're getting what we deserve, because then church is highly expensive. It's very consumeristic. It's recreational at best as far as people's commitment. But you go into struggling areas and you provide one thing that they need, and nothing's recreational. Like, people are all in small struggling towns. Like, there's more activists in this little town of Alton. Like, everybody helps everybody in this town, and it's one of the great benefits, I think, to angling towards the poor. Not only does it change you to the core, but you really can do some good.
So two book questions before we go into that connection again. We've got less than 10 minutes. Number one, somebody said, hey, the party book, I need that, happy hour, but Amazon is out of stock. Can I get it somewhere else?
Because I got tired of Amazon. That was the only book I did that you can only get that at HughHalter.com.
And guys, buy it.
One dude in a warehouse in Ohio that will send it to you. So yeah, just go to HughHalter.com.
All right. Definitely check it out, guys. That is a phenomenal, like, take a small group. That would literally transform any group that you've got. And another one was Tangible Kingdom. It says it exists in PDF format in Russia. How can we use it for missional communities? Who is your contact for Russian language? Do I detect a little illicit translation going on here, Hugh?
Probably, but we do have it in Ukrainian, apparently. But here's what I would do. Don't try to get the book for folks. Go to Missio Publishing. Caesar Kalinowski runs that now. And they have the TK primer is now digital. So where we used to not be able to ship the TK primer overseas, you can grab the digital version.
Okay.
And that might be the easiest for your people as well.
I was just on with Caesar yesterday. I had no idea he was running that, but Missio literally had the coolest looking books, like with the gospel primer, all those things. Those were some the little spiral bound things. Those are cool. So real quick, so we got about 5 minutes before we give you the send off. What would you say as far as like that transitioning? And I know it's not rocket science, right? I know it's probably even a weird question to ask you, but when you mention like transitioning from, it's probably asking you like, how do you breathe, Hugh? What's it like to breathe? Discuss how we do it. But when it goes from this business side, how does the gospel infiltrate? How do you guys find? Because I know there's kind of a delicate balance, right? When you're running business's mission, like, I am here to actually give you good coffee. It's kind of like the Moravians. I am here actually to provide this business to you. I'm not being creepy about it, but I also want to share my life with you because I am a missionary.
I do a little 2-minute talk is what I call it. If somebody's come in here 5 or 6 times, and it's harder now, but the first couple of years, I would try to be in here during the main hours, 8:30 to 11. If I saw somebody come in 5 or 6 times, I would actually walk up to them and bother them and say, hey, time for your 2-minute talk. And they would freak out and go, what is that? And I go, well, I can tell you're becoming like a regular. And I said, a lot of people that become regulars end up being a part of the family around here. And I would love to be able to remember your name. So it helps me to remember your name if you just give me 2 minutes of your story. And that has been like a cool little entrance into people's lives. A lot of times the 2-minute stories are 20 minutes or 2 hours, and then they eventually ask our story. So that's been how I've personally interacted. But there's also been, we joined a CrossFit gym way before the coffee shop. So it's just entering into things that are going on in this town. seem to be how things move. If somebody in our community has a heart to start a recovery home, then we go try to find a house, and we got one, and we put it on a pretty rough part of our city, and then we take in anybody that needs help. And one young girl was a 16-year-old single mom that had been sexually abused by a local police officer, therefore had gotten into all sorts of drugs and all sorts of stuff. We took her and her infant in to this one family's home, and she just came to faith last week, including, an exorcism that she asked us, because she said she just got tired of hearing all of their voices. So, but her spiritual transformation happened because we innovated something that wasn't there before. So unless we have a home where local social agencies know that they can send somebody to us, and my daughter worked at the social agency, so she was the connection. It's like you need these actual innovations for the work of the kingdom. I can talk to people all day long at the coffee shop. It may not end anywhere. They have to end up at tables. So this young girl has been able to sit with this family of 5 children that live in this house with her and learn how to see moms and dads and kids interact. And then it's been a year and a half she's been there, and she finally said, like, I want to do the Jesus thing. So, but if we don't have those innovations, we know we can't invite her to church. That it's not going to get the job done. There's too much brokenness there. At the end of the day, when you're building out a kingdom ecosystem, you need the businesses to build out tables. Tables are where people talk and interact and find out about the Jesus story. But we need homes. We got to view church not as an institution or organization. We got to view it back in family lingo again. The world right now needs brothers and sisters and moms and dads.
So good, dude.
Just think about the whole thing as church planting is you got to build out families, but you're going to need business to support the missionaries and to bless people and to give folks jobs and to be a witness and to share money and all sorts of stuff.
So good, brother. And before you guys drop off, let me encourage you for the next 60 seconds. I'm going to ask Hugh to share with us where to get in touch with him. He's already mentioned HughHalter.com. That may be the answer. Might have stolen your thunder there. But also any upcoming projects. Sorry. Hey, shut up. Ricky's been with me for months. He's like a brother now. So I do tell him to shut up sometimes, but only for big guests, Hugh. Only for like really important guests.
Yeah, I feel loved.
No, I'm teasing. But anyways, so but honestly, you're always doing something cool, and you're fun to watch, and I love talking to you, man. So thank you on behalf of everybody who showed up. This is actually the biggest day I've had. I've been doing these for about 3-4 months, so you should be encouraged, man. You beat Brian Sanders. I'm just saying.
I'm texting him right now.
You should tell him. Yeah, Caesar's coming on next. He's coming on in August. Next month, I've got Mike Wade, who kind of set up the assessment for Mac Lake nationwide. But that dude starts businesses in his sleep. He's going to be on next month talking about, because the way he trains planners is he starts a pizza parlor, and then he gets them running that, or he starts an ice cream shop. So he's entrepreneurial to the max, but then he trains them to plan at the same time. And so we're gonna talk about what kind of craziness that is. And I should probably hook the two of you up as well. But brother, thanks for coming on. Where are some places that people can connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, if they are really thinking about moving this direction, they just email me, HughHalter@gmail. We kind of live to help coach and help folks do this. You're not bugging us.
Any bus tours coming up, brother?
No, I got to renovate an old farmhouse that we got to move into
Saw that.
5 weeks. So I'm going to just hunker down and get that done. And then maybe the bus will come out again.
Okay, so the bus tour next time you're doing it, I was in the middle of like all this renovation on it, the worst part of it. But next time you're down, dude, we need to hook it up.
If any of your listeners want me to come in, and I could even bring in I can bring in Mr. Taylor McCall that started that Birmingham. We love to go to cities and help think of new ecosystem development. So if that's you, give us a call.
Well, I might just yank you guys out to San Diego. when I'm getting mine down.
Oh, we
And
never want to come to San Diego. We love the weather here in St. Louis area so much. It's, oh my gosh.
all right, man. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on. It's Hugh Halter. Definitely check out his book, Happy Hour, Bivo, Gathered and Scattered, Tangible Kingdom, many others, and go to hughhalter.com. His email is hughhalter@gmail.com.
Actually, don't go to hughhalter.com.
Don't go to hughhalter.com. It's the first time a guest ever said that.
11 years, like it's terrible. Just call me if you need me. Whatever.
All right. So email is the best way. And hey, thanks for joining us today on behalf of New Breed, which sponsored this today. And thank you for your time, Hugh. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace out.